the alumni office at the university. And I'm just glad to be here to give some scholarship pointers.
Okay.
And y'all, I'm here. It's Daniela from Community Affairs. You guys met me last week with Kim. I'm having, for some reason, my computer is not connecting to the video. So I am working out some technology glitches, but you will see my face shortly, I promise.
At the university.
Wonderful. Well, we will go ahead and share the screen so that, share the presentation on your screen so that we can get started with that presentation. Danielle will be our support for that.
I will. We are, sorry, I started hearing Lori from our recorded Zoom. So 1 second, let me get the right screen up so you guys don't see Lori talking to you mirrored, because that would be crazy. Okay, can everyone see this?
It looks great.
Okay.
Perfect. So I will get us started. Like I said, we're going to start kind of general, letting you guys know, terms to be familiar with as you're entering into paying for college and applying for things and all of that. So these are just some general terms to be familiar with, and I'll go into a little bit of detail with each of them. But we want to make sure that parents understand the distinction between financial aid, grants and scholarships, and loans. So financial aid is like a big, broad term. This is, all of the things that are being offered to you to help you pay for college, basically. So if you hear someone say financial aid, it can mean, federal financial aid from the FAFSA. It can mean grants and scholarships. It can mean loans. So it's sort of the umbrella term for everything. And, building off of that, you have grants and scholarships. So these are free funds that are given to students to help them pay for college. So the big, thing that we want to hit here is that these are the funds that you guys are going to want to look to first in order to, cover your college bills. Just because it's going to benefit the student most to gather as much of those funds that they possibly can that don't have to be paid back. And then, of course, we have loans. Those are going to be, we want them to get grants, we want them to get scholarships, and then we want loans to sort of be their final option, because that is money that has to be paid back to whoever lends it out. And Lori, feel free to interrupt me or jump in whenever you want. But so, those are sort of the two main distinctions between financial aid that you'll find. And all of those types of financial aid are going to be used to cover what's called your cost of attendance. So cost of attendance is just a number that the university or college comes up with that is an estimate for what your student will spend within 1 year to attend that school. So our cost of attendance might look a little bit different from other colleges or universities that the student is looking at, but it will be an estimate of all of the costs the student will incur while they are attending school for a year. So that might be things like their tuition and fees and books, room and board, but a lot of schools will also include some sort of outside costs as well. And it's good to distinguish between what is due to the university and what is sort of extra budgeted in. So don't be shocked if the cost of attendance that you see on a website is a little bit different than what you end up paying to a university. Sometimes, because that's an estimate, there's a little bit of a difference there. And then just to get a little bit more into, we're talking about different types of aid. So like I said, financial aid is sort of a big umbrella term. And just like grants and scholarships and then loans fit under that umbrella, these three types of aid that you can see on the right-hand side also sort of fit under that umbrella. So federal aid is going to be everything that comes from the FAFSA. Everything that comes from the federal government is going to be considered federal financial aid. Institutional aid is going to be aid that comes from the college or university specifically. So these are going to be things more like what Lori will talk about with specifically university scholarships here at UA and also at other institutions. It's what the college or university is giving to the student. And then there's external aid. So these are going to be those extra scholarships or grants that a student can get through, writing an essay, doing a quick application. These are going to be the scholarships most likely that your high school guidance counselor will be able to guide you to. And they're going to be more dependent on what the student, was involved in high school, maybe clubs that they were a part of, those sorts of things. So those are the three main types of aid that you're going to be looking for. And like I said before, we really want to focus on students getting those grants and scholarships first. So put a lot of effort into those. And then if they need additional funds after all of those avenues have been explored, that's when we'll start, looking into the loan options.
Tori, I think, financial aid and scholarships and paying for college can all be very overwhelming. The nice part about that, about this actually, is that these terms apply no matter what institution, right? These
Absolutely.
are not specific to UA terms. And so they can really utilize this terminology and the understanding of these terms, no matter where they're applying, what type of institution they're applying to, whether it's a community college or a private college or a large university or wherever they choose to go. This is going to be the same language that's used. And I just want to clarify and make sure that and confirm, but grants and scholarships, you don't pay back. All the other loans, whether it's no matter what type of loan it is, you will have to pay loans back.
Yes,
Whereas
that's exactly right.
Brilliant.
Right.
Thank you. I always like to just confirm and summarize and make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
And Kim, I think that's a really good point because we had a group of students on campus today. And we were talking about the exact same thing. So all of these terms, are going to be consistent no matter where you go. I think, am I glitching?
A little bit, but you're still good.
Yeah, I am. Okay, well, I can see you guys on my computer and on my phone, but that's okay. But what's going to be important is once we start talking about timelines is, the timelines that we're talking about are specific to UA, but the terms and the types of funding, whether it be a scholarship or financial aid or different types of loans, those are going to be similar across the board. It's just the timelines that we need to start to pay attention to.
So I think unless we have any questions, I think we can move into the next set of terms, unless there was anything you guys thought I missed. Okay, great. Okay, so, talking about what fits under that umbrella, the first thing, I'm here as a representative of financial aid, so I'm going to talk specifically about the FAFSA. That's what I have the most knowledge about. So just to give you guys, again, these are going to be general terms that you're going to be able to use no matter what university the student ends up applying to. So these are all terms and all things you'll want to know about specifically the FAFSA. So FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid, but none of us want to spend that time saying that whole long title, so we say FAFSA. So the first really important thing to know is FSA ID. So this is basically like your login information for FAFSA. And it's really important to know that your student will need login information for FAFSA, but you as a parent will also need that login information as well. You guys will need two separate accounts. And that's because these FSA IDs basically function as, they function as your login information. It's how your student is going to access that portal throughout the whole time that they're attending college and afterwards. But they also function basically as your signatures on these FAFSA applications. So that's why your student needs one and you need one as a parent so that you can both sign that FAFSA application so that it is official. So it's really important to, get on and create that ID. Everything FAFSA, and this is, one thing that makes it really easy. Everything FAFSA having to do with FAFSA is studentaid.gov. So you will go to studentaid.gov, and the first thing that they will prompt you to do is create an FSA ID. So my recommendation personally would be, if you're ready to do that, to go ahead and create FSA IDs for both yourself and your student now. Because, you know, it's linked to your social security number, there is a little bit of processing time on it. So if you go ahead and create those accounts now, you'll be ready to fill out your FAFSA when it opens. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to the timeline. Another important term to know when you're filling out the FAFSA is a student aid report, or a SAR. You'll hear it referred to both ways. Basically, this is your summary of all of the information that you are going to input on the FAFSA. So you'll go through the FAFSA. There's a student demographic section, a parent demographic section, and a school selection section. Those are the big main three. And you'll go through and you'll put in all of the information that's required. And after you've submitted everything, you will get a student aid report, and it will be accessible through that online portal, and it'll also be emailed to you so that you can review that whole summary of what you have submitted. You know, just some general stuff. You know, if you were preparing to fill out a FAFSA for this year, you would use 2020 tax information, you know, just for a little bit of extra information. The FAFSA always uses tax information from 2 years prior to when the student will start school. And that's to give parents a little bit of extra time, you know, because we know it takes time to file those taxes and things. It used to just be 1 year. But now, you know, we give that 2-year window so that, you know, parents have that time to file those taxes. But after you filled out the FAFSA, when you get your student aid report, there's going to be this magic number on there called your EFC. And that stands for expected family contribution. And basically what it is when you put in all of that income information on the FAFSA, the Department of Education runs a calculation basically, and they come up with this EFC number that they think is the amount that you can put towards your your student's college education within a year. So they're going to give you that number, and they are the ones that compute that number. So schools don't have anything to do with calculating your EFC. So just keep that in mind. And the other thing to keep in mind is that your EFC will be the same no matter what school you apply to. So you're going to get that EFC number from FAFSA, and it's going to be the same at all of the universities that you apply to. However, you know, the university is the one that awards funding. So some universities may have extra funding for students with an EFC of this number, while some universities may not have as much. So while your EFC will always stay the same, your funding may look a little bit different, you know, across the board, depending on what scholarships and institutional aid is available. And then that number also determines what federal financial aid you can get. Now, that one is not as fluid as the institutional aid. But when you get your EFC, it'll also tell you, with this EFC, we expect that you should be awarded this much through federal financial aid. And that's going to be, you know, things that we'll talk about here in a second, but grants and loans and those sorts of things.
Tori, we know that we have lots of families who have lots of different family structures. So if a student lives with grandparents and the grandparent, or with aunts and uncles, or with a guardian who is not a parent, does that affect how they complete the FAFSA form, and what does that depend on?
Yeah. So the FAFSA will lead the student through, or the parent or guardian, whoever is filling out the FAFSA with the student, it will really lead them through in that parent demographic section. It'll ask those specific questions, basically like, has the student been adopted? Has the student ever been in foster care? Has the student been placed in a guardianship? So yes, it may not always be, you know, the biological parent that is filling out the FAFSA with the student, and that's totally fine. You know, it can change the award amount a little bit depending on the situation. It can change that EFC depending on the situation. Those are, you know, it's hard to to say with every single situation, but that's also what federal financial aid offices are for. You know, we're very used to, when the FAFSA opens up in October, we're very used to getting questions and getting calls. And any federal financial aid office at any university really should be open to talking you through what your actual situation, what the student situation is, and how they should go about filling out the FAFSA. But yes, those questions are built in because, you know, Department of Ed understands that not everyone has that sort of typical living situation.
And then does the parent, guardian, whomever is completing this with the student, if they are also inputting the tax information, should they be the one who is claiming the student as a dependent on the tax bill?
So
is that what it's basing the relationship on?
If the person filling out the FAFSA with the student is not their biological parent, most likely that is going to create a special circumstance situation for the student where their EFC will actually not be determined by the parent, but by the student's actual income information, which for a lot of freshmen in those situations is 0, and that's totally fine. You know, it may be if the student is formally adopted and has adoptive parents, then that's different. Yes, it will be, you know, based on that, the adoptive parents' tax information. But if a student is in a guardianship or in a foster care situation or anything like that, then, you know, that situation changes it a little bit. It's more dependent on the student's financial information than it would be on, you know, whatever situation they're in.
Great. Thank you so much for clarifying this situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that EFC conversation leads us into financial need. And again, this is a term that if you bring this term to any financial aid office, they're going to know what you mean when you say financial need. So when we get your EFC, when whatever university you apply to gets your FAFSA and we see your EFC, we calculate your financial need. So we get your financial need by taking that cost of attendance that I talked about earlier. So that estimate that we come up with for a year of attendance, and we subtract your EFC from that. So if, you know, the cost of attendance is, you know, and I'm just using round numbers here. So let's say the cost of attendance at a university is $10,000 and your EFC ends up being $500. You know, then we would expect that your financial need would be $9,500. So it works like that, where we do that small calculation based on the EFC that we receive, but the Department of Education does that big calculation to actually get your EFC. I think that's everything there, unless comments, questions.
I would like to jump in here for a moment.
Yes, please.
Okay, so from my perspective with scholarships, what I would like to pass along is that not everyone that reviews scholarship applications knows what your EFC is. That's confidential, and only certain employees can see that. So what we need for you to do is to include those types of your family situation, your financial situation information as bullet points in your scholarship application. Some of us may only see your financial need based on the words you put in your scholarship application. We do here at Alumni have a lot of scholarships that it's preferred that we award it to a student with financial need, but it's financial need based on your scholarship application and not what you complete on the FAFSA.
And Lori, I don't know if, you know, is it advisable to tell parents and students, you know, if they were to call the Federal Financial Aid Office and get their EFC, does providing that number mean something to you all, or is it better for them to just sort of give a summary of their financial situation?
It would be better just to list your situation. There is a miscellaneous box on the scholarship application, and it would be better just to tell your financial situation.
Perfect. Okay.
And I think that brings up another good point. Something that we were talking about with our students today is all of this, y'all, is so individual and it's so family based and it's so student based. So it really is, there's no one answer that goes to everyone, especially when we start looking at need based and things like that. So if you do have questions as you start to apply and as you submit your application or about how things look, please do ask. And it kind of goes back to, what Kim was saying about how every family structure is different. That's going to change how, things are awarded. And so you might hear from someone that this is how it went for them. That does not mean that it's, just cut and dry across the board. So please keep in mind how personalized all of this is to your family and your setup.
I always recommend including your student in these conversations. So anytime you call financial aid, making sure there's going to be a period in time where your student is going to have to lead those calls anyway. Once they become a student, they're going to have to be the one to initiate those conversations anyway, because you will not have the same access because certain laws go into effect once they become a student. And so go ahead and incorporate them into those conversations from day one so that they have a good understanding of where their funding is coming from. It gives them a little bit more of an investment, pun intended, so that they are understanding all of the financial pieces to this, that they don't think that that's just magic that's happening somewhere, but that they have a good foundational understanding of where their funding is coming from.
Okay, I'm gonna talk at you guys just a little bit longer. But okay, so I was talking about EFC, financial need. This is how universities determine and colleges determine what types of aid and how much aid a student is eligible for. So to get into that a little bit more and give you guys some vocabulary for discussing these things, like Kim said, with your students, these are the three main types of federal financial aid that are offered through the FAFSA. So you have federal grants, and there's the Pell Grant, which a lot of you may have heard of. If you've heard of something, you've probably heard of the Pell Grant. There's also something called the Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, which is the SEOG. And then for Alabama students specifically, we have the Alabama Student Assistance Program, or ASAP, you might hear it called. So all three of those, if you see any of those in an award letter, once that time comes, those are all grants. And when you do receive that award letter from our institution or the other institutions that you apply to, you should see them designated as grants, and you should see a little blurb that says that they do not have to be paid back. So that's the first type of funding, is federal grants. And that would be different from grants that your student could possibly apply for. From that first slide, that there might be external grants that the student can apply for. But through federal financial aid, those are the main ones that you're going to see for in-state students. The second type of aid that is offered through federal student aid is work study. So these are on-campus jobs or jobs with our off-campus partners that the student can be offered. They work part-time. The pay is usually somewhere between $7.25 and $9.25 an hour. And the funding comes from the federal government. It's important to know with work study, this funding with federal grants and the other types of funding, that funding is applied directly to the student's bill. And that is how it works at all institutions because it's a federal regulation. That money is applied directly to the student's bill to help pay that bill. With federal work study, the student is paid over time. So while it might not help take down that initial bill balance, it may help cover some of those other things that are in the cost of attendance, like transportation, personal expenses, books, those sorts of things. So just keep that in mind, that if the student is offered work study, an amount might be listed, but that's just the amount that federal work study is expected to give them maximum throughout the year. And that 725, 925 range that I gave should be pretty standard across all universities, but it might be slightly different. So if you have questions about what the work study pay might be for a student at a different university, definitely, ask those questions. And then the final type of aid that's offered through federal financial aid, and it is considered aid, are federal loans. And there's two main types that are given out to students specifically, and they are the subsidized loan and the unsubsidized loan. So the subsidized loan, the most important difference between these two, the subsidized loan will not accrue interest while the student is in school. So if they take out that loan, no interest will accrue until they go into repayment after graduation. With the unsubsidized loan, it does start to accrue interest right away. So if the student is offered both types of loans, and again, we really want these federal loan options to be last dollar sort of options if they can be. If the student is able to only use a portion of a loan, we would recommend the subsidized loan over the unsubsidized because it's going to benefit the student in the long run. And then just quickly to sort of tie this back to that financial need conversation we were having, some of these things are need-based. So federal grants, federal work study, and the subsidized loan are all need-based type aid. So that means that whether or not a student is eligible for them is dependent on that EFC that the Department of Education is going to give you. The real only guaranteed type of aid for all students is going to be that unsubsidized loan. And then just another quick caveat, the federal, not Pell Grant. Pell Grant is an entitlement program. If the student has the eligible EFC, they are guaranteed to receive that Pell Grant amount. But with those other extra grant options and with federal work study, those are limited funding options, and this is true across all universities. So if you would like your student, if you think that they will be eligible for those types of aid and you want your student to have the best chance at getting them, you need to fill out their FAFSA pretty early so that the university can get them on time and they can be part of that first group that starts getting awarded. So I think that's my spiel, unless Kim or anyone else wants to jump in.
I just want to, because this is kind of paying for college in general, and you mentioned work study positions, I also wanted to make sure note that there are also just general jobs on campus. Every single campus that you take a look at or your student considers, your student is going to have opportunities to work while they're on campus if they wanted to get a job. So that would be on top of any of this, but could help pay for college some as well. We have lots and lots of students, and I'm sure across the country, lots of students who work off campus as well. I work with a lot of students who have jobs that are off campus at local restaurants or hotels or businesses. And so they manage to do both. Some students are working just part-time jobs in order to help with those costs, whereas other students will decide that they want to work full-time while they're also taking classes, and sometimes they are able to make it work where they're working part-time and also taking a full-time load of college classes, or sometimes they are working full-time and then taking part-time number of hours of classes each semester. So there's lots of different combinations, and all of these federal student aid opportunities kind of can support any of those options. I do want to ask though, Tori, do you have to be a full-time student in order to be eligible for Pell Grant or any of the grants specifically?
That's a great question. So for Pell Grant is actually, and it's the only award that's like this in federal financial aid, it is based on enrollment. So a student who has, we have a big chart, every financial aid office will have a big chart that has all of the EFC numbers on it. So we'll take your EFC and we'll look at how many hours the student is enrolled in, and we'll see how much they're eligible for. So at full time, which for undergraduate students is 12 hours, they would be eligible for the maximum amount of Pell Grant funding. And that amount will go down a little bit for, every smaller hour that they take. So, if the student is in 9 hours, then they would be eligible for 3/4 of their Pell Grant amount. If the student is enrolled half time, so 6 hours, they would be eligible for half, and so on and so forth. But another thing that this brings up is that for all federal aid types, so loans, grants, work study, to be eligible for any of it at all, besides that Pell Grant, you can be enrolled a little less. The student has to be enrolled at least half time. And so for undergraduate students, that is 6 hours, or 2 classes generally is what 6 hours normally equates to, at least on our campus. You would want to talk to other campuses just to make sure. But so 6 hours is the halftime requirement, and that amount of enrollment is required to receive federal financial aid.
And then are students able to apply financial aid to summer classes if they take classes over the summer?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we'll do is when we see, at least at our university, this is how we do it. And this is how most universities sort of function with summer awarding. But we award on year-based terms. And in federal financial aid, the year is fall 2020, fall of that year, all the way up to summer. So fall, spring, and summer all fit within the same award year. So what we do is if we see that the student is registered for summer classes, we send them an email and tell them to opt in to summer funding. And what we'll do is we'll review all of the aid that they've received throughout the year. And if they have room left, if they haven't, let's say a student didn't use their federal loans in fall or spring, but they're going to take summer classes and they want to use, a small amount of that subsidized loan to help them cover a class, they would be eligible to use that for summer, but it does have to fit within those annual limits.
Great, thank you.
And Tori, I know when you touched on work study, you mentioned it gives them the max that they're going to be awarded. Can you talk a little bit? I know that that's not something that everyone can get. So like if they're interested in, getting work study, can you share how to make sure that happens?
Yeah. So like Kim was saying, just because, if a student isn't eligible for federal work study, that doesn't mean that they can't, have a job on campus. Like for our university, we have a job board that's eligible for all students. It's jld.ua.edu. And students can go on there and just apply to on-campus jobs. The only difference is, and this is true across most universities, with federal work study, that position is guaranteed. So the student, is sort of placed into a program and they work that way. But most campuses have job boards like that where the student goes through a normal application process and still can work on campus. And usually the rates of pay are the exact same. It's just that the funding is coming from different places. And I think.
And I have Gabby watching the chat too, and we haven't had anything pop up, so we're just gonna keep rolling. And if something does pop up, I will stop us.
Sounds perfect.
Mid-sentence.
All right. So, as we've talked about, we want loan funding to be the last option that students look at. But, just reality, some colleges are more expensive than others. And for some students, they might get as many scholarships as they can. They might be eligible for a full Pell Grant. They might have taken out even their federal student loans. And if additional loan options are needed, we wanted to let you guys know what resources were out there. By no means am I telling you that you should take out a huge loan for your student to go to school. As I've said over and over, I really do think that these should be your very last options. But with that being said, we wanted to give you these resources. So if you need additional loan sources to cover the student's bill at any college or university, the first recommendation that I always give is going to be the Parent Plus loan. Now, this sort of reminds me of, Kim, what you were talking about earlier with students having different living situations. The Parent Plus loan does have to be filled out by a biological or legal step parent of a student. So unfortunately, if that is not the living situation for a student, they wouldn't have a person that would be eligible to apply for this. But, I want to make sure that that information is out there right off the bat so that no one, walks away from this thinking that this option is available to them when maybe it might not be. But for those qualifying people, so biological parents and legal step parents, they can fill out a Parent Plus loan. And again, this is a federal loan, so it's going to be on studentaid.gov with everything else. And the reason it's usually our first recommendation is because it is a loan that usually has a lower interest rate, and it usually has some repayment benefits. So usually you can defer repayment if you're not ready to start making payments on it right away. Like I said, it is a federal loan, so you would apply on studentaid.gov, the parent would. And it is a credit-based loan, but unlike a mortgage loan or a bank loan, it's not so much looking at your credit score, it's more looking at credit history. So even, if you are looking at your credit score and you're like, oh, I really don't know if I would be eligible for a loan like this, it's not so much looking at that, it's more looking at, credit history within the last 5 years. Basically, have you made good on credit payments? So you can apply for that loan. The other good thing about a Parent Plus loan, and the reason we recommend it first, is if the parent applies and for whatever reason they do get denied, the student is eligible for additional loan funds. So it's not just, denied and you're out of luck. It's sort of, okay, we see that you were trying to get this additional money. We can offer the student some additional loan funds now that we see this denied Parent Plus loan application. So that is another benefit to that loan type. So the other types of loans that are possible, are available, the first type would be a private educational loan. These are the ones that you're going to hear about from, Sallie Mae, College Ave. We have some sort of big lenders that we normally see. Yes, thank you, Kim. Yes, sorry. So to amend what I was saying about the Parent Plus loan, so biological parents, step parents, and adoptive parents. So I am very sorry. I did make a mistake there. So if the student has been legally adopted, those parents can apply for a Parent Plus loan as well. Okay, so private educational loans. These are going to be from outside lenders. So this is not federal student aid anymore. And like I said, the big four that we see on our campus most often are Sallie Mae, College Ave, Citizens Bank, and Discover. So those are the main four that we see. But if you ever call a financial aid office and say, hey, what private loan should I get? We're not going to be able to give you any personal recommendations because we're public universities and we can't endorse any private lenders. So that's usually, if you call our office, we're going to give you those same four every time. That does not mean that they are the best four that are out there. It's just the four that we see most often. I think we'll have some resources at the end here, but US News always posts a really good list of the best private loan lenders. And you can get on there and sort of compare their different interest rates. Interest rates on private educational loans do typically tend to be, fairly high, which is why we recommend sort of, it's your last dollar option. But they still have some of those repayment benefits normally. Usually you can defer or, pay interest only, or do those sorts of things. And with private educational loans, the benefit here is that, or, one of the things to consider here is that A private educational loan, instead of being in just the parent's name, like the Parent Plus loan, the private educational loan will be in the student's name and the parent will just be a co-signer. So your student is a little bit more involved in the responsibility with a private educational loan than they are with the Parent Plus loan. Also with private educational loans, people other than, parents can be co-signers. Kim, did you?
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I learned a couple years ago that if a student parent they are not accepted or they're denied the Parent Plus loan, then that then makes the student eligible for additional financial aid.
Mm-hmm.
If a student does not have anyone who applies for the Parent Plus loan on their behalf, are they still also eligible for additional aid?
Yeah, so that's one of the unfortunate parts, is that we do have to have a denied Parent Plus loan on file to offer those additional loan funds. It's just one of those federal regulations. So you do have to have someone apply and be denied to be eligible for those extra loan funds.
Okay, that's great. I wanted to know the process. And so then if a student has a parent who is denied a Parent Plus loan, then do they just update their FAFSA, or do they have to contact the financial aid office in order to gain access to the additional aid?
Yeah, so that's one of the really nice parts about this, is that as soon as we get an application in and it has, it said that it was denied, one of the options when the parent is filling out the Parent Plus loan is, if they expect that possibly they will be denied, they have an option to choose that they want to start a credit override. Basically, they want someone to overlook their credit again and do an appeal, basically. So as long as the parent decide, if the parent knows for sure, like even if someone didn't appeal, I'm pretty sure I'm still going to be denied. So if on that question, the parent or whoever's filling out the application if that question is answered as undecided, or that they will not seek an appeal, as soon as we get that application and see that it's denied, we process the denial funds for the student. There's nothing extra that they have to do other than going on and accepting those additional loans.
Great. And so then that additional aid for the student then comes as additional loan money that then the student would need to pay back down the line as well.
Yes, that's correct. So it is additional loan.
Yep. Since we're using financial aid as a big umbrella, I wanted to make sure that we know that it is actually loans that will be, that the student will be eligible for additional loan money.
Yes, it is additional loan money. And, another important note is that it's additional unsubsidized loan money. So it is that loan type that does start accruing interest right away. So, important to note that is what will be offered to the student. We won't accept it for the student right away, but that is what is offered sort of as consolation for being denied for a Parent Plus loan.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for explaining that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so, private educational loans. Like I said, I think we'll have some resources for you guys. The interest rates are a little bit higher, but they do have some of those repayment benefits that are offered because they are educational loans. So a lot of lenders will allow you to defer payment until the student has graduated, or for a year, or they'll let you enter into a payment plan where you're only paying interest on that loan. So the last type of loan that you could possibly receive is a personal loan. So some parents, the interest rate, or, for some students, the interest rate is the most important thing to them. And you can sometimes get a loan with a lower interest rate than even the Parent Plus loan through your personal bank or through a personal credit union. So we don't want to discount that option. If you need loan funds and the interest rate is really important to you, it's possible to find a loan with a lower interest rate through one of those avenues. The one caveat there is that a lot of the time, those loans aren't going to have the same repayment benefits that the federal Parent Plus loan or the private educational loans have. So a lot of times, if you're taking out a personal loan from a bank or a credit union, they want you to start paying it back, fairly quickly thereafter you take it out. But that option is there, and we don't want to discount that because it is an option that some students and parents do decide to use. So I think that's everything for loans. Yay, and now we have a timeline. Okay, so we've sort of extended this timeline to time before just the senior year. I know a lot of these conversations are very focused on the student's senior year of college, but really there is some prep that can happen before students enter into that time. So as students are sophomores and juniors, one of the most important things that a lot of times people aren't thinking about is filing your taxes on time, at least for federal financial aid, because like I said, because the FAFSA uses tax information from 2 years prior to when the student will start college, filing taxes on time so that you have all of that information ready to go, it's filed, it's there for you, is really important as your sort of student is entering into those middle high school years. And then also, it's just a really good time to start your research. So if you're here as a parent or a guardian or a person for, a student who's a sophomore or a junior, congratulations, you're doing your research. It's good to start looking into those different scholarship options and what exactly is federal financial aid, and look at the universities, the different universities and colleges the student is interested in, and look at their scholarship packages and look at what's available there. And also have the student, and a lot of this, the high school guidance counselors will be doing this for your students, hopefully. But the student can also, go to the guidance counselor and say, hey, these are the things I'm interested in. Can you help me find some scholarships that I would be able to apply for in a year or two? Or, hey, these are the organizations that I'm a part of. What money do you think might be out there for me? So beginning that research, getting taxes filed, having sort of everything in order is really important, even starting back sophomore and junior year. But, if the student is in their senior year and you're sort of just getting started, that's totally fine too. Don't feel behind. But if you're here early, great, and keep going. Okay, but then jumping into a student senior year, this is when all the action sort of gets going. So in summer and early fall, you want to start having them apply to the colleges and universities that they are interested in. And obviously, I should have mentioned this, but in that beginning research as they're sophomores and juniors, you want them to sort of have a list of colleges and universities that they are most interested in that they can begin applying to. So that in summer and early fall of their junior year, they can start applying to those colleges. They can start applying to the external scholarships that they have identified for themselves. They can start applying for the scholarships at the different colleges and universities that they are interested in, and really start getting those application processes going. And then this is normally, like I said earlier, when I recommend that parents and students create those FSA IDs for themselves so that they have that information ready to go on October 1st, which is when the FAFSA opens. So this is coming up on us very quickly. This year has gone by so quickly. But so October 1st is next Friday. So that is when the FAFSA will open. So if you go ahead and get the FSA IDs created, you'll be able to log in very quickly on October 1st and get that FAFSA done and submitted and sent out. As I said earlier, the earlier you can get that FAFSA done, the better, because a lot of schools will have priority dates that they give out, that they sort of say, hey, if you want these extra types of funding, like, those extra grants that I was talking about, or federal work study, like we said, there's other work study options, but federal work study. This is the date that we need to have your FAFSA in and completed by, so that we can give you the best chance to have those opportunities. So moving into the bottom half of this timeline, these are all going to be UA specific dates. So keep that in mind. We're just talking about UA here because that's really, the only frame of reference that we have. But these deadlines may be different based on the college or university that the student is applying to. So definitely look at whatever their due dates are. Don't just take this and apply it to all of the universities or colleges that the student is applying to. But for UA, our priority date for those extra types of federal financial aid is going to be December 1st. So opens October 1st. Usually if we have your FAFSA by December 1st, you have a good chance of getting that priority type funding. And then I'm going to turn it on over to Lori so that she can talk a little bit more about scholarships. I've been talking your ear off for a good hour now as she talks about scholarships because that deadline is up there for January 15th.
Okay, thank you, Tori. Okay, so we know January 15th is the deadline date. It's really a priority date for you to be admitted and submit all of your scholarship application information, which includes additional documents, essays and such. But what I'd like to give you is some information that's good for your scholarship application, no matter which university or to your college that you would like to get scholarship support from. So the best piece of advice I can tell you is start early. Create a document on your computer like a resume and keep up with your activities that you're participating in. Specifically for UA, I know our format is that we want to know your leadership positions that you've been in, whether that's an official voted in leadership position. We want to know your volunteer activities. We want to know if you work part-time during the year, full-time during the summer. It can be a paid job. It can be a volunteer type job as well, such as maybe babysitting that you don't get paid for, or pet sitting. So those types of activities are what we want to see. But we need details. This piece of paper that we're going to review, that you give us your words, is the only way we know you. So I know earlier I mentioned that we need to know your financial situation. If you have circumstances such as maybe a grandparent lives with you and your family that y'all support, maybe you have an older sibling that's already in college and your parents are already supporting that endeavor. We need to know that. And so this scholarship application is your only chance to tell us. So I recommend if you are, if I'm talking to parents, if your students are not involved, they need to get involved. If they don't know where to start, what are they passionate about? Maybe that could lead them to getting involved in some clubs. Maybe they need to start a club and meet with groups that do the same things they do. Is it a book club, a knitting club, a sewing club, a Harry Potter club, sports. Start something, get involved. We are looking for students that are well-rounded, that are involved in their community, whether that's through school, community activities, church activities or ministries, sports. That's what we're looking for, and that's going to benefit you no matter where you're applying for scholarships. Try to keep your document organized in some way, whether it's by activities or by date, so that when you are filling out your scholarship applications, you can give us lots of details. Personally, for me, when I am reviewing a scholarship application, it's fantastic when the student has everything chronologically. I can see what they do in the 9th grade and the 10th grade and the 11th grade, and how that student usually gets more and more involved as they go through their high school career. And I see that evolvement and how it grows and what activities they participate in. They usually are a member of, say, the Key Club, and in the 10th grade and 11th grade, they pick up a leadership position and they participate in more volunteer activities, and just grow with their activities that they do. Working, I see the gamut. Some parents don't want their students to work. And if that's the case, have your student put that on the scholarship application, because we do feel like a student who works appreciates the money that's being spent on their education. They're working for it. They are responsible. So we do like to see that. However, we know there's a lot of students that are involved in several sports and several leadership type positions, and it doesn't leave a whole lot of time for working. But we do like to see that. Let's see what else I can give you. I would like to explain that I would think that no matter which academic, which university that you're applying to, there's going to be a variety of scholarships. I know specifically from UA, I'll speak to that. Your largest avenue of scholarship dollars will be from the admission and scholarships department. It will be based on, the first level is based on merit. So it would be the GPA after the 11th grade, and your test scores at the time you apply. And as you might take additional tests and your scores increase, then the value of your scholarship will change. And be sure to look at the scholarships.ua.edu to see that table of scholarships based on GPA and test scores. You'll see right away what you would automatically be offered. Then admissions and scholarships also has competitive scholarships. That's where your scholarship application comes in review for that department. The academic area that you are interested in enrolling, such as engineering or maybe education or social work, that academic area, their scholarship department is going to look at your scholarship application as well for their scholarships. I do want to take a moment and brag that the alumni scholarship department here at UA has the largest scholarship program in the country. And a lot of people believe erroneously that all of our scholarships are for children or grandchildren of UA graduates. We have almost 700 endowed scholarships that we offer through our office, and only 4 of them are for children or grandchildren of graduates. So we have a lot of money that we award. A lot of them, it's just a variety of criteria, but we cannot consider you if you do not meet our deadline of January 15th for freshmen. It's March 1st if you're transferring in from another university or from a 2-year college. And then once you're here on campus, you have to complete the scholarship application each year by March 1st so that we can continue to review you and offer you scholarship money. So we have a variety of scholarships through our office. You can look at our website. It is simply alumni.ua.edu/scholarships. We have those competitive scholarships. We have the membership-based scholarships, which are degree holder scholarships for both all 3 levels of undergraduate students coming in or currently on campus. So I'm trying to think Kim or Tori, can you think of anything I've missed?
I did just want to pipe in and just as a good reminder, because Crispus from admissions last week told us, gave us a little bit of a preview of how the scholarship application is tied in for initial university scholarships at UA. I did want to just mention that is not standard across every college campus. And so you will want to make sure that your student does a little bit more research to make sure that they understand, is their admissions application also part of the scholarship process, or is there a separate standalone scholarship application? Additionally, if you are going to apply to alumni association scholarships or any other third party, those are also going to be standalone scholarship or applications as well. And then you touched a moment on reapplying for scholarships as a continuing student in their second, third, and fourth year or subsequent years. That is the case for the Alumni Association. That is the case for a lot of, some scholarships are set up so that you're going to get the same amount each year and that they are recurring. You don't have to reapply. Maybe you have to maintain a certain GPA in order to stay eligible to continue to receive those scholarships, while others are one-time scholarships that you have to reapply for or apply for new scholarships each year. And so just making sure that your student is aware of that. Usually that scholarship deadline is right around March 1st. But again, that can vary on different college campuses as well. Because a lot of times students, it's not enough for families oftentimes to just think about funding that first year. You really want to think about the whole picture and making sure that you have a plan for funding for the entire degree, to make sure that the student doesn't get 25% of the way in and then needs to scramble for funding each year. So thank you for letting me interject.
And I think Kim brought up a really good point that actually came up during our session today with some students too, is we talked about those external scholarships and the criteria surrounding scholarships. Sometimes scholarships are going to be awarded from your college of study. So, if you go into your undergraduate degree as a business major and you receive an award from the business school that maybe is a 4-year award, but then you decide to change majors or change colleges of study, that's going to impact how your award can be applied. So when you get that scholarship award package, it really is important to look at the details of what you're being awarded and what the criteria of that award is. So Kim mentioned GPA requirements, or, if you do need to stay in a college of study, all of those things will kind of be contingencies to make sure that if it is more than a 1-year award, that it continues to be applied. So that's just something to keep in mind, especially if you are looking for financial support that's going to carry all 4 years. Is if these are reoccurring awards, what do I need to do to ensure, or what does my student need to do to ensure that that award stays on their account? And then, Lori, we always get a question about athletic scholarships. So if you could just touch a little bit about how those are separated, I think clear it up for some people.
Well, it will be very short because I'll be honest with you, athletics is its own animal. We have like my department has no idea what they do over there, how that works, who applies them. From my perspective, I get told by the financial aid office if a student who's been awarded a scholarship is involved in sports, and they tell us whether or not that student can receive our scholarship because they're just in a class of their own. And what I can tell you, which applies to a very few limited students, I guess, is on the scholarship application, there are a lot of scholarships which are on what we call the check the box section. And you self-identify if you are, say, a descendant of a player that played for Bear Bryant or another coach, in sports. And a lot of times we'll get calls here because they just don't know who to call about those particular scholarships if they have questions, or perhaps they didn't get awarded that and they thought that they would. So we get those calls because they're not sure who to call. And of course, it is athletics, but we're glad to pass along the contact name over there and a phone number or an email address. The biggest thing to walk away with is if you have questions, call us or email someone. And we'll get you there if we don't know the answer, but they are athletes, and those scholarships and the scholarships that we can or cannot award is its own animal.
I will say, because not everyone who is thinking about athletic scholarships is potentially going to apply to the University of Alabama. And so I do think it's an important conversation that you have as a family with an admissions counselor on any of the campuses that you're visiting or your student is considering, because to a certain extent, everyone has to follow certain rules in regards to athletic scholarships when it comes to NCAA compliance. But at the same time, there are also unique circumstances that are associated with each campus. And so I encourage you to have those conversations when you are visiting each of those campuses that your student may be interested in applying to.
All right, y'all. Well, we are past our hour mark. Who would have thought that we could have gone over an hour for this? But I think we covered a lot of ground tonight, and we did mention resources. So y'all, those resources are going to be put down in the description so you can find those links and you can click on them and just make sure that you're navigating to the right legitimate websites. And just like Lori just mentioned, if you have questions or if you're not sure if a website is, legitimate, or you're not sure if you're submitting the right thing to the right person, please call us. You can call financial aid, you can call scholarships, you can call me at Community Affairs, you can call Kim over at Family Programs, you can call any of us, and we will make sure that you are giving that financial information to the right person, or you are getting the right answers that we need. We know that you might hear a lot of different things about paying for college, and we just want to make sure that you have the correct resources to do it. But the biggest takeaway is please do not hesitate to ask questions. And it's really never too early to start preparing for that.
That literacy is key. You don't want to just hand over your financial information, your tax information, your student social security number to just any application that claims to be a scholarship. And also, if you are having to pay an application fee for a scholarship, that's also another red flag. And so just keep those things in the back of your mind. And again, as Daniela said, please let us know if we can help clarify along any step of the way.
All right, y'all. Well, we are going to close out tonight. We have our final session of the semester next Tuesday, September 28th, here on YouTube, 6 p.m. We are going to be covering, I think this is a really fun one. It's campus tours and questions to ask. So as you start looking at the college, search process, as a family, as a parent, as a guardian, what questions do you need to be asking when you get to campus? What resources should you be looking for your students? What are your options? So we're going to have some students on the call with us. We are going to have Janine again from Early College with us, and we should be able to cover a lot of great ground. But thank you guys for joining us tonight. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened with my video, but I will get this working for next week. Thank you, Lori, Tori, and Kim. You guys are the best. And their contact information, we'll definitely link their websites below so you can find their contact information. But we appreciate you